Have you ever had a moment where a single sentence, just a few words, completely altered the trajectory of your existence? I'm talking about a split second decision where if you hadn't listened, everything would be over.
That is a heavy way to start. Honestly, I think we all like to believe we'd be the hero in our own movie, making the right choice instantly. But in reality, most of us freeze. We hesitate.
Exactly. That freeze response is primal. But today we're looking at your personal story from rural Mississippi back around 1970, where freezing wasn't just a mistake, it would have been fatal. It's a story about your father, a fire, and four simple words: Bubba, you better move.
Yes, Bubba, you better move. It sounds so casual, doesn't it? Like something you'd say to someone blocking the TV. But in this context, those words carried the weight of life and death. Bubba was my dad's nickname.
Oh, wow. Let's set the scene. It's a chaotic night, heavy Mississippi rain, the kind that drums on the roof and puts you into a coma sleep, suddenly chaos. And your father wakes up his family, four kids, because the house is on fire.
Four kids. Just pause on that. The sheer logistics of getting four children out of a burning house in the dark because the power was out in the middle of the night. That is a nightmare scenario right there.
Absolute chaos. Smoke rolling along the ceiling, flames licking through the doorways. They make it out, barely. But then your father realizes your mother isn't there. She gone back for her purse.
Oh, that panic. That specific type of panic where time stops.
Your father runs back and saves her. They stand there on the wet grass, and this is where the story takes the turn that really struck me. They are standing there watching their home burn to the ground. They have nothing but their pajamas, no cell phones, no 911 dispatch that can get there in time, just water rising over the road from the flood and fire on the other.
It's a biblical image, isn't it? Trapped between the flooded road and the fire of the house. And the volunteer fire truck couldn't even reach us?
Right, the road was flooded. The firemen could only watch from a distance until it was basically over. So your family is standing there wet from the rain, watching everything you own turn to ash. And your father, he's standing near the only thing left upright, the chimney.
The chimney, the symbol of the hearth, the center of the home, usually the strongest part of the structure in a wood frame home.
He's staring up at it, crying, trying to hide his tears from the kids. He's paralyzed by the grief of it all. And that's when your mother says it. She doesn't scream, she just speaks. Bubba, you better move.
And he listened.
He turned, took a few steps toward the family, and crashed. That massive brick chimney collapsed right where he had been standing seconds before a thunderous roar if he had stayed in his grief for 5 more seconds.
He's gone.
He is gone, and this is where I want to dig in because you, the youngest of this story, make a profound point. You say later in life you realize that if that chimney had crushed your father, the entire lineage of that family changes instantly.
It's the butterfly effect, but much more violent. Think about the sociology of it. 1970s rural South, a black family. My father is the breadwinner, working as a school janitor, but also farming 60 acres to feed everyone and hustling to make ends meet.
Precisely. If he dies, your mother is left with a mortgage, four young children, and a farm she likely can't manage alone. They lose the land. There were 14 kids altogether, but the older siblings had all moved up north to find jobs and start their life away from the farm. Some of the younger kids still living at home, like your older brothers, probably drop out of school to work to help support your mom, along with the older kids that moved away. The poverty cycle tightens its grip. And you get everything else that comes along with poverty having its arms around your throat.
It's terrifying how fragile stability is. One moment of inaction, one refusal to move when warned, and generations of progress get wiped out. But he did move, and what happened next is, well, it's a masterclass in resilience.
It really is. You didn't have the Red Cross, you didn't have GoFundMe, you had the cavalry, aunts, uncles, cousins, and good neighbors. Your parents split the kids up temporarily and the adults got to work. They converted a smokehouse into a temporary home.
A smokehouse? For those listening who didn't grow up on a farm, paint that picture. We are talking about a shed for curing meat, right? Think smoked sausages, country ham, and that good smoked bacon with the rind on it.
Yeah, a 15 by 15 foot shed, smelling like hickory and salt. They added a kitchen and a back room, no indoor plumbing. You used an outhouse or a slop jar.
A slop jar. That is a humble reality check.
It is. But you talk about it with such pride. You mentioned that even though your family were living in a converted meat shed, they were together. And within 6 to 8 months, your parents used the insurance money to build a brand new brick home.
That's the Jeffersons moment. Moving on up.
Exactly, but here is the layer of the story that gave me chills. It wasn't just about this fire, there was a backstory to the land itself.
Oh?
Your father, Bubba, bought that farm with the help of a childhood friend who happened to be the white president of the local bank. They had grown up together when they were small kids. When your dad lived on their property, your dad had actually saved this man from drowning when they were kids.
Wow, I always love to hear my dad tell the story of how he saved him. So there's a deep bond there that crossed the racial lines of the time.
Yes, but some people in the community didn't like it. They didn't want a black family owning that prime land. The banker friend had to pretend he was just playing the game to keep the heat off. You know, the game of I'll take it back when he can no longer pay, keep all the money he collected and sell it again for even more money, and maybe offer him a deal that will only make the financial situation worse. Like, and get this, the night before they closed on the property, before they could sign the papers, the first house on that land mysteriously burned down. And your family ended up with a significantly smaller home that your dad, his family, his friends, and community helped him rebuild on the same spot. Maybe the blessing in that is that your dad was able to buy the land for much less of a cost. You say he paid $25 per acre.
Yes. I wasn't even born yet. That was the first time a house burned on that property. I'm sure that was very disappointing and a major setback for my parents.
2 house fires that result in a significant loss.
That changes everything about the scene with the chimney. When my father was standing there crying, looking at the ruins, he wasn't just mourning a house, he was mourning a repeated trauma. He was probably thinking, why does this keep happening? Can I ever win?
That's it. That is the emotional weight. He was watching years of struggle, sacrifice, and systemic pushback go up in flames again. That temptation to just stand there and give up must have been overwhelming.
It makes my mother's voice even more powerful. Bubba, you better move. She wasn't just telling him to dodge some falling bricks. She was telling him, do not let this despair crush you. We are not done.
And they weren't. Your father went on to pay off that farm completely. He and your mother raised the kids on that property. When he died, he had no debt. A man with a third-grade education who couldn't read well beat the odds again and again.
You know, I will never forget the time when a door-to-door insurance salesman was trying to shame my father later in life.
Oh, I loved that part. The salesman says, I can't believe you'd leave your family without life insurance. I mean, your dad just rises up and says, when I die, if I lay in this house and stink long enough, they'll figure out how to get me out here and bury me.
That is such a raw, pragmatic strength. He knew his value wasn't in a policy, but it was in the plan he already had in place and the legacy he was building.
So bringing this back to us, to the listeners, you use this story as a metaphor for life. We all have wobbling chimneys.
Right. We get stuck staring at the disasters in our lives. A failed marriage, a career that's imploding, a bad habit that's burning down our health. We stand there paralyzed, watching the ruin.
And we wait too long. We think if we just stand still, maybe it won't get worse. But the lesson here is the chimney is going to fall. The only variable you control is whether you are standing under it when it happens.
That's a terrifying but liberating thought. You better move. It's an instruction for spiritual and emotional survival.
It is. You talk about life being like an ATM. You have to make deposits, love, faith, community, so that when the crisis hits, you have something to draw from. Bubba had deposits. He had the banker friend. He had the family cavalry. He had his faith. If he had been isolated, if he hadn't built those bridges.
The story ends differently. He might have moved physically, but he wouldn't have had anywhere to go and no community to help and no faith to persevere during these tough times, seemingly against all odds.
Exactly. It's that combination of community and action.
I think what resonates most with me is the idea that God, or the universe, however you want to frame it, often speaks in very practical warnings. It's not always a burning bush. Sometimes it's just your wife saying, hey, get out of the way.
Or a gut feeling that says, leave this job, work on your faith, or end this relationship.
And we ignore it because we are comfortable in our misery. We are comfortable watching the fire because it's mesmerizing. But the debris is coming.
The debris is coming. That's the takeaway. You cannot rebuild if you are crushed by the wreckage of the past. You have to step aside first.
It reminds me of that old saying, when you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop and admire the flames.
Precisely. Bubba moved. He rebuilt. And because he moved, you grew up to tell this story. You grew up to see that a third-grade education didn't limit his father's dignity.
It really puts our modern complaints into perspective, doesn't it? We panic when the Wi-Fi goes down. Our family lived in a smokehouse and used a bucket for a bathroom, and we called it moving on up because we were getting a new house.
It's a testament to perspective. Gratitude isn't about having everything perfect. It's about recognizing what you still have left. They had the land, they had each other, and you never heard your parents complain during this tragedy, but you heard gratitude for what they still had. They had the chimney, well, until it fell.
Laughs, right, until it fell. But even then, the destruction of the chimney was the final act of the fire. Once it was down, the danger was over. They could start cleaning up.
That's a great point. Sometimes the thing you are afraid of losing needs to fall so you can actually start clearing the ground. You can't build a new brick house around a dangerous, unstable ruin. Your father moved the site of the new house from the old spot to another spot that didn't hold those memories of the other two homes he lost on the property.
So, the question for everyone listening is pretty clear. What are you staring at right now? What disaster scene are you replaying in your head? When you hear God's direction and move, sometimes you need to lay the foundation in a different spot.
And more importantly, what is wobbling behind you? Is it your health? Is it your debt? Is it a toxic situation you're tolerating?
And are you humble enough to listen when someone you love says, you better move?
Because that voice might just be the only thing standing between you and a total collapse.
It's not about fear, it's about action.
Absolutely. It's about faith in motion. Your dad didn't know where the money for the new house would come from in that exact moment. He didn't know how they'd survive the winter in a smokehouse. He just knew he couldn't stand there anymore.
And that was enough.
That was enough. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with that image. The rain, the smoke, the chimney swaying, and the choice.
To stand still and be a victim of circumstance, or to step aside and become the architect of your future.
Bubba moved. And because he did, the story didn't end in the ashes. It ended in a brick house, debt-free, with a legacy that outlived him.
A powerful reminder to us all.
Thanks for listening. Take a look around your life today. If you hear that whisper, don't ignore it. Move. We'll catch you next time on In the Huddle.